Dun, dun, dun. Welcome everyone to Talk with Sally. Hope everyone is having a fantastic day. Today we are talking Operation Gladio. Hold on one sec. I gotta make that song so long on purpose to make sure that it's streaming. Okay, there we go. Open that up to X. X is like really slow. Good on all three. Sound is good. Okay, so I have a question. I don't know if I should wait for everyone to get in here to decide. So I pulled up, so I'm assuming all of you guys, well, maybe you didn't all hear about this, but the Prime Minister, Robert Fico, I can actually share this with y'all. Hold on. Let's share this real quick, give you a visual. So we have Robert Fico. So this is the guy that shot him, and his name is Jawar Cintula, and he shot in this little area in Slovakia, shot Robert Fico. And in my humbled opinion, it goes right along with everything that we have talked about that happens to go along with Operation Gladio. So we can cover that at the end of this. Sounds like I'm over the target. He mentioned Gladio on his show today. Oh my gosh. I think people are starting to understand. And I was like so geared up. I forgot to add myself to the screen. My apologies. I was so amped up today because I was listening to, I don't know how many different spaces I listen to, because when I'm working in the yard, I listen for my show prep. It perked your ears. Yay. So to go prep for my show. Hi, Wanda. Welcome. I go out into the yard and I pull weeds because I don't send, I have my hands are already, so I'm not sending messages or anything like that. So I was done with my weeding part. I'm like, oh, I'll go listen to a couple of spaces. And I got in a couple of them, and it is so infuriating that people still think that there's right and there's left. And the whole argument today was that the leftists are all communists and the right is all this. And it's like, do you guys not realize that both parts of the government, hi, Timber Traveler, that both parts of the government are totally and completely co-opted? They're completely infiltrated. All religions are infiltrated, and they want to try to bring it back to World War II or World War I. I'm like, guys, it goes back to the beginning of the crucifixion of Jesus Christ. It's been a long time struggle. Operation Gladio is just an operation that was set up after World War II. However, the tactics that they use are the exact same thing. What they do is they either do a soft coup or they do a hard coup. A hard coup is, gone, like they attempted to do to Robert Fico. And a soft coup is like what they did to Donald Trump and what they did to Bolsonaro, right? They didn't want these leaders in power, so they made sure that they weren't in power. They do it either through rigging elections or swaying votes a certain way or preventing certain people from voting, right? So that's one way they do it. So what is Operation Gladio? And I'm not going to take 30 minutes to recap this, so you guys are going to have to pay attention. I'm going to go through quickly. What is Operation Gladio? Well, Gladio is a bunch of, are considered left behind soldiers. What is a left behind soldier? Well, it's soldiers that work like a guerrilla type thing. So all of the different countries have a form of a CIA. All of them work together in this little secret government. And they have soldiers, and NATO is a part of it. UN is a part of it. They're all a part of it. They have this little secret government they formed after World War II. And this group of people needs money. So this group of people trains them. They give them weapons. They teach them how to do assassinations, coups, infiltrate different parts of the government or different groups of protesters. Think of Black Lives Matter, think of Antifa, think of J6, and everything that is going on in our college campuses right now. They're designed and they're trained. And sometimes they capture the young ones. Typically they're the younger ones because they're much more easily manipulated. Okay, so they infiltrate these different groups and they train these different assassins. Well, they need money to do this. So they brought drugs into the United States from heroin, cocaine, weapons, humans, whether it be, I'm just going to say humans. When I say that, you guys can think of all the horrible ways that they traffic humans into the United States. One way that this operation is broken up is if there is closed borders. Therefore, we have to always have open borders. So before people go off on this whole Trump thing, was doing things to try to clean the swamp. He was doing things. Anyway, let's get back on track. So this little secret group of people was comprised of international bankers, like the elite. It's not just like the regular bankers where I go get a bank loan, right? This is for just the elite people. So they got a bunch of these banks. They recruited the mafia to bring drugs into the United States. It's eventually laundered to the Vatican. The Vatican takes 10 to 15%, and then it's spread out through all these different NGOs, different organizations, and different people have gotten money off the top. They get their drugs. They were getting it from Afghanistan, and then originally they were getting it from the Golden Triangle, and when that was cut off, they'd already set up shop in South America. So this is a whole global thing. And they trade weapons to these people who are fighting each other. And I'm not talking like little pea shooters. We're talking grenades, missiles, big time weapons. And then they get drugs in return, and the whole process repeats. That was the first time I've summed that up really quickly, under 3 minutes, I believe. Okay, so tonight's episode, if you guys have been following me and you have been paying attention to this, I go through all the details. And to me, I'm a detail-oriented person. Some people can skim through the stuff. I need the details because I need it to make sense. So this whole narrative we've gone through, we've had people doing bad things in South America, governments overthrown in Turkey, Brazil, Guatemala, Haiti, Cuba. Okay, every country, guys. So over the last, I think, since the 1920s or 1900s, there's been 70 to 75 soft coups or hard coups. And they can all be linked back to Gladio. I firmly believe that the Russia attacks were Gladio. This new assassination attempt on the Slovakian president reeks of Gladio, same MO. Everyone's like, well, it couldn't be because it's a lone wolf person. Give me a break. Supposedly the person who shot JFK was a lone wolf, right? Anyway, so tonight we're going to see some of the bad guys who got caught are going to get thrown under the bus. And I think the main reason, and it hasn't said this yet, this is my belief, is the reason why is I think they got caught embezzling money from the Vatican and other people. And it doesn't specifically say that, but they all get thrown under the bus. And because there was a couple that they threw under the bus and they were weak and they could not handle the pressure of being in prison for a long time, well, you know what happens? They start to talk. So we're going to see some get away with it because, well, we're just going to start listening to the chapter. But we're going to see. So we're talking about killing and kidnapping. So there's going to be some kidnapping and then we're going to do some killing. And so what we'll do is we're going to listen to one chapter and then we're going to decide if we want to, after the one chapter, if we want to continue to a second one or go over, I don't think going over, we could probably do both. We probably do all three. I don't think talking about Joar Cintula will take terribly long. However, it is in the news right now. And I actually heard about it. I saw it at, I think, 2 a.m. last night. I made a post. I woke up. I'm like, I wonder how that posted because nobody else had posted about it. And I woke up and for whatever reason, sometimes X does this. It didn't go through and I'm like, dang it. So am I saved? But everyone had already gotten it out. I was excited. I always get excited. Hi, Smoke and Joe. I always get excited when I get first to a story. I know I'm not going to get these big hits like these big accounts, but I still get excited. Welcome, PDS10. All right, guys. Hopefully, everyone who joined had a good recap. And I don't know how I'm so energetic, and I think it's because I'm tired. I usually nap, especially on days I do my show, but I didn't today. So hopefully I survive, and you're going to survive with me. However, this story is getting pretty juicy. Hi, Andy. I don't know if it's you. When I got kind of, did I lose an arm? Do I have two arms? Do I need to move my microphone? I don't know how. I never know where to place my microphone. It's always so awkward. See, it's going to fall. Now you maybe move it. One of these days, I'm going to get myself a new desk. And one of these days, it's all going to work out. Okay. What was I? Can you hear me okay with it over there like that? Anyway, when I started my stream tonight, I got panicked because StreamYard said there was a high volume of streamers tonight and that they were having technical difficulties. I'm like, really? Like as I'm signing in to do this. There we go. I can't do it. You're going to have to deal with my arms like this, Smoking Joe. I don't know where to put it. First world problems, I know. I need to figure something out with this mic thing, though. It bugs me. Okay. I look like a cute convict. I know. I almost wore my white and black, and it's hot in here now because it was actually a warm day. So I'm like, I'm just going to wear this. Actually is meant to be a skirt, and I just turned it into a dress. Just kind of creative like that. Okay. Enough rambling here. Oh, before we get started, guys, if you are on X, please share it out because so other people know to come in here. And if you're just got it popped out and you're just listening and not messaging, leave a message underneath because when people leave messages underneath, it says, oh, people are interested in this. So that really helps me out and I do appreciate it. Do the same on Rumble and on YouTube. And tonight I am not leaving Rumble or YouTube. We're going to stay on all three platforms. Questions are very welcome. I don't have all the answers, and there's a lot I do know. What we don't know, we'll research for later. Yo, 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 traveling fools, welcome. Okay, you would think that I did. I need to not get sleep more often. I don't know who that is. Timber Traveler, dedicated music artist Jan Michael Jar did a concert at the UFO Bridge in Latvia last weekend, dedicated it to Jane Goodall. Again, just saying he must be in his 80s but looks 40ish. Oh, that was just conversation. My bad. Okay. Thank you, Smoking Joe. You're awesome. You guys are great. Okay, let's go ahead and start listening to this book. As usual, guys, if the sound is good, please press 1. If you can't hear it, press 2. If it's blowing out your eardrums, press 5.
Chapter 19. Killing and Kidnapping. The main reason why De Pedis is buried in the Basilica of Saint Apollinaire is that it was he who put an end to attacks by the band, and not only against the Vatican. These pressures by the Banda were due to money on loan to the Vatican through Calvo's Banco Ambrosiano and never returned. After the Orlandi fact, even though all the money was not returned, De Pedis, who was building for himself a future in the upper middle class, worked through reference prelates to stop the violence. Among the things asked in return for this mediation, there was also the guarantee of being buried, in a distant death, there in Santa Apollinaire. Antonio Mancini, bagman for the Banda della Magliana, La Stampa, July 27, 2011. Calvi's death was first ruled a suicide by a coroner's jury in London. But the verdict was quickly quashed, and a second jury declared it was unable to decide between murder and suicide. The investigation continued for many years. The Italian detectives remained convinced that the banker must have been killed. At the time of his demise, Calvi was 62 years old and overweight. He suffered from poor eyesight and pronounced vertigo. To commit suicide, he would have had to overcome impressive obstacles. As Peter Popham explained in The Guardian, in the pitch darkness he would have had to spot the scaffolding under the bridge, practically submerged in the high tide, stuff his trousers and pockets with bricks, climb over a stone parapet and down a 12-foot-long vertical ladder, then edge his way 8 feet along the scaffolding. He would then have had to gingerly lower himself to another scaffolding pole before putting his neck in the noose and throwing himself off. In 1998, Calvi's body was finally exhumed, and a coroner determined that the man who had been known as God's banker, indeed, had been murdered. The Strangler speaks. In the wake of this decision, Francesco Frank the Strangler.
So Calvi supposedly unalived himself. However, he was extremely overweight, had heart problems, and other medical issues. When they found him, he had bricks of money on him, and he had very poor vision. So there was no way. No, you said you liked the stream last night in a post, I thought. No, I just went and listened to the one last night that Colonel Towner did. Anyway, back to what I was talking about. So this guy, Calvi, there's no way he had the ability, the strength, the fortitude to go and do what he did. And of course, they ruled it a suicide. And then years later, it was opened back up because they're like, there is no way that this guy could have done it himself. To this day, the unaliving has still not been solved.
Strangler Di Carlo, the heroin traffic manager for the Sicilian Mafia, testified that he had been approached to kill Calvi by members of the Corleonese crime family under capo Giuseppe Pippo Callo, the mob's cashier. Interviewed in 2012, the notorious Supergrass, British slang for informer, said, "I was in Rome and received a phone call from a friend in Sicily telling me that a certain high-ranking mafia member had just been killed. I will never forget the date because of this. It was 16 June 1982, 2 days before Calvi was murdered. The friend told me that Pippo Callo was trying to get hold of me because he needed me to do something for him. In the hierarchy of Cosa Nostra, he was a general. I was a colonel, so he was a little higher up, my superior. When I finally spoke to Pippo, he told me not to worry, that the problem had been taken care of. That's a code we use in the Cosa Nostra. We never talk about killing someone. We say they have been taken care of." Calvi was naming names. No one had any trust in him anymore. He owed a lot of money. His friends had all distanced themselves. Everyone wanted to get rid of him. He had been arrested and he had started to talk. Then he had tried to kill himself by cutting his wrists. He was released, but knew he could be rearrested at any time. He was weak. He was a broken man. I was not the one who hanged Calvi. One day I may write the full story, but the real killers will never be brought to justice because they are being protected by the Italian state, by members of the P2 Masonic Lodge. They have massive power. They are made up of a mixture of politicians, bank presidents, the military, top security, and so on. This is a case that they continue to open and close again and again, but it will never be resolved. The higher you go, the less evidence you will find. Di Carlo, on another occasion, said that Vincenzo Casillo and Sergio Vaccari, 2 members of the Camorra with ties to P2, had received the contract for Calvi's murder from Callo and Licio Gelli. Casillo and Vaccari were killed by a car bomb shortly after their return to Milan. In case Casillo had engaged in some pillow talk, his mistress, Giovanna Matarazzo, a nightclub dancer, was murdered in her apartment by Camorra assassins. The Killing Crew. The ordering of Calvi's death by Callo and Gelli was verified by other high-ranking mob figures, including Francesco Marino Manoia and Luigi Giuliano, who served Stefano Bontade. The two mafiosi testified that Ernesto Dio Talevi, a leader of Banda della Magliana, also took part in the hit. Dio Talevi, like Danilo Abrucciati, worked closely with Flavio Carboni in smuggling drugs and arranging assassinations. After the Calvi affair, Dio Talevi and Carboni continued to do business with the IOR by laundering drug money through the Camillian, a religious order dedicated to serving the sick and dying. It was only to be expected that members of Banda della Magliana would emerge from the shadows of Blackfriars Bridge. No murder by contract group had been more useful to P2 and the commanders of Operation Gladio. The street gang from northern Rome came to the fore of organized crime in Italy with the kidnapping and murder of Italy's Prime Minister Aldo Moro, who sought to form a coalition government with Italy's Communist Party.
So Moro believed that they could work together with Russia and these different places, and that was a no-no. You couldn't do that, and he was starting to lean more towards the left at that time.
And the murder of journalist Carmine Pecorelli, who published an article that made the connection between P2 and Moro's fate. By 1982, the Banda's hit list had come to include Judge Emilio Alessandrini, the Milan magistrate who initiated the probe into the activities of Calvi, the IOR, and Banco Ambrosiano; Giorgio Ambrosoli, who presented testimony to the financial police concerning Michele Sindona's financial dealings with the Vatican and Gelli's Masonic Lodge; Lieutenant Colonel Antonio Varisco, head of Rome's security service, who was investigating the activities and membership of P2; and Boris Giuliano, the Palermo police deputy superintendent, who had spoken with Ambrosoli about Sindona's laundering of drug funds through the IOR. In addition to the killings, the Banda was responsible for detonating a bomb at the home of Enrico Cuccia, managing director of Mediobanca, who had witnessed Sindona's threat to the life of Ambrosoli, and for the attempted hit on Roberto Rossoni, the deputy chairman of Banco Ambrosiano. After participating in the murder of Calvi, the gang tossed Giuseppe Della Cha, an executive at Ambrosiano, to his death from the top floor of the Milan Bank. Della Cha was preparing to provide documents to Italian investigators that established the Vatican's ownership of the United Trading Corporation of Panama and the other dummy companies. Irreparable damage.
Those were just the people that one person was willing to testify against. Listen to how big of a baby he becomes. Sindona becomes a big baby. It's quite hysterical.
But the killings could not repair the damage caused to Operation Gladio by the Ambrosiano affairs and the obstinate poll on the papal throne. After the publication of the P2 list on March 17th.
Okay, before we get too much further, the title of this, for all those who've been listening since the beginning, so this is episode 13, and we've been covering this for a while. Think back, and I want you to pay attention to this chapter because I want you guys to answer me later. Do you guys think that Sindona, them not backing Sindona, and I don't know if you remember the Ambrosio Bank, but they found a way to create shell companies and to get more shares and siphon money from this bank. And Sindona getting caught, and now Calvi getting caught after the fact for, hopefully that was someone's loud. That was distracting. Anyway, I want you to think, so they figured out how to siphon off this money from this bank, and people were mad because people lost a ton of money from the Banco Ambrosiano. Tons of people lost tons of money, and they wanted it back, and the Vatican refused to give the money back. As a result of all of this, them being greedy and trying to figure out how to get more money from this bank from other people, now everyone's crumbling. So after this chapter, I want you to let me know if you think that it was Sandino just being arrested or if it was the bank.
1981, Licio Gelli was forced to flee the country. News of the generals, admirals, parliamentarians, Italian cabinet members, industrialists, police officers, Secret Service officials, and ecclesiastical dignitaries who belonged to P2 had been published before, most notably by Mino Pecorelli in his newsletter Osservatore Politico. Many mainstream reporters had dismissed such stories as scabrous examples of yellow journalism. For this reason, the discovery of the P2 list at Gelli's villa jolted the Italian press into an awareness of the reality of the sinister lodge and its intent to gain control of the government. The discoveries by the Carabinieri became headline news throughout Italy and Central Europe. The fears of the CIA came to full fruition. John Paul II's refusal to shore up the losses of the Vatican's shell companies had resulted in the exposure of P2, the raid on Stibam, and the collapse of Arnaldo Forlani's Christian Democratic government. This exposure prompted General Alberto Dalla Chiesa of the Carabinieri to come to the realization that the Red Brigades were a puppet organization of right-wing militants, that these militants were being manipulated by P2, and that P2 fell under the command of SISMI. He also uncovered evidence that the funding for P2 and its strategy of tension was coming from a heroin pipeline that had been established between Sicily and the United States, along with a letter from Aldo Moro that mentioned the presence of NATO guerrilla activities on Italian soil. When Dalla Chiesa reported these findings to the Prime Minister, Andreotti went white in the face. His worst fears were coming true. Operation Gladio was beginning to unravel. On May 1, 1982, General Dalla Chiesa arrived in Palermo as the new prefect of Sicily. 2 days later, he met with Ralph Jones, the U.S. consul, and informed him that the Gambino, Inzerillo, Spatola Mafia clan, and P2 were involved in a heroin smuggling racket netting a yearly profit in excess of $900 million. Word was passed to the Federal Bureau of Investigation, and the extended Gambino crime family in New York and New Jersey were put under constant surveillance. On September 3rd, the general and his 32-year-old wife were gunned down and killed on Via Carina by a team of 6 assassins. On sacred ground. 1 month after Calvi's death, commissioners from the Bank of Italy appeared at the IOR to confront Archbishop Marcinkus about his part in the collapse of Banco Ambrosiano. Most of the $1.75 billion remained missing, and Marcinkus had issued the
$1.75 billion is missing, and this is back in the 80s, 82-ish. And this is a year, this time frame is a year after the attempted assassination of the Pope.
The letter of patronage, acknowledging the Holy See's ownership of the 8 dummy corporations that consumed the cash. In response to the commissioner's questions, Marcinkus produced the counter letter signed by Calvi, which stated that whatever happened to Banco Ambrosiano and the 8 corporations mentioned in the patronage letter, the Vatican would suffer no future damage or loss. The Archbishop then showed the commissioners to the door, informing them that neither the Bank of Italy nor the Guardia di Finanza possessed any jurisdiction within the sanctified walls of Vatican City. But the Italian government maintained pressure on the Holy See for full disclosure of its involvement in the Ambrosiano affair. The government, said Italy's Treasury Minister Beniamino Andreatta after meeting with Marcinkus, is waiting for a clear assumption of responsibility by the IOR. While the waiting continued, the Italian press ran daily articles about the Vatican and its relationship with the Sicilian Mafia and P2. Rome's daily newspaper, La Repubblica, began to publish a cartoon strip called The Adventures of Paul Marcinkus. To quiet matters, Cardinal Agostino Casaroli, the Vatican's Secretary of State, proposed the creation of a 6-man commission to make an investigation into the Vatican's involvement in the collapse of Banco Ambrosiano. 3 were to be named by the Vatican, and 3 by the Italian Ministry of the Treasury, The Italian government complied with the proposal. The results, as expected, were inconclusive. At the end of October 1982, the Vatican officials ruled that Holy Mother Church had no interest in the dummy corporations and had not been involved in the plot to drain the bank of its wealth, while the three Treasury officials ruled otherwise. Proof of guilt. Dissatisfied with the finding.
Pause. Okay, so maybe the Pope was not aware of what they were trying to do. They definitely did and were part of all these things. Now, just think about, it's kind of like during the 60s when they created this whole entire ring, this whole racket, and Sandino with Calvi were setting up shell corporations. Sandino helped to move all the assets from Italy to the United States because Italy was threatening to start taxing the Vatican. It had a clause in there that, so it was like an NGO. They were exempt from having to pay taxes. And the government was threatening to make them pay taxes, which would cost them billions of dollars. I think it was over $200 billion a year, if I'm correct, in just taxes alone. Maybe it was 200 million. I'll have to look that number up to be exact. Anyway, so these guys helped the Vatican move all this stuff. And one of the companies that they had was birth control. And Sandino ended up purchasing it for hire just to keep it secret, just to get it. He purchased it just to get it out of the Pope's name to save face. Because why would a Pope who is against or a religion? I'm not Catholic, so I don't understand all these rules or the rules they had. The one thing I do know is they were against birth control for quite some time. So the fact that he had stock and ownership in a birth control company was kind of fascinating. So I think that this is the fourth Pope. I'll have to look that up because one died in 63. This other one took office in 68. The current one that right now that they're talking about took office. So 1, 2, 3. So yeah, he's the third or fourth Pope since the 60s. So he may not. This is the Pope. No, this is the Pope that was from that country. He's one of the few that was foreign. Gosh, what? Poland. Sorry, he was Polish. He was from Poland, and they brought him in intentionally to replace the other Pope that was only in office for 33 days. And that Pope had threatened to expose everything. He was, he was going to destroy not just the whole entire Gladio secret government. Whole thing was going to be gone. He had letters in his hand. He was poisoned. They tried to say it was a heart attack. It later come out that he was poisoned. He had a German Pope. He was Polish. And they actually recruited him to go be the Pope. And he, to this date, has been the longest standing Pope I think, in history, if I remember correctly, at least in 455 years. I think he died in 2004.
Ambrosiano's creditors continued to mount pressure for a settlement, since most of the $1.75 billion had vanished within a black hole created by the Vatican's shell companies. The Italian government was left with no option save to mount a criminal investigation to determine whether the Holy See had been the culprit in a shell game that had caused the financial ruin of thousands of families throughout Italy. Documents were unearthed in the records of the Banco del Gottardo in Switzerland that the Vatican indeed had set up and controlled the dummy corporations to plunder the assets of the Milan Bank. One, dated November 21, 1974, and signed by Vatican officials, was a request for the Swiss bank to open accounts on behalf of its newly created company, United Trading Corporation of Panama. Other documents found within other banks revealed more acts of fraud by the Holy See. One document showed that the IOR had received 2 deposits from Banco Andino of Peru on October 16, 1979. The deposits were for $69 million each.
Whoa.
When the deposits matured in 1982, Banco Andino asked for its money back. But the Vatican Bank refused, saying that the United Trading Corporation of Panama now owned the money, and the IOR had no control over it. Still, the Pope refused to acknowledge the Vatican's ownership of the companies, for fear such an admission would reveal that the Bride of Christ was no longer pure and without blemish, but had engaged in wanton acts of covetousness and greed. The impasse would have to be addressed by another decisive act. Gone Girl. On June 22nd,
So they stole money from the Ambrosiano Bank. They moved it to Peru, and the Vatican refused to pay the monies back to the people because they said it no longer was in their possession. Yet they were trying to prove that they were all in cahoots in this whole money laundering scheme.
1983, Emanuela Orlandi, the 15-year-old daughter of a Vatican employee, disappeared without a trace while on her way to her home in Vatican City from a music lesson at the Pontifical Institute of Sacred Music, a building attached to the Basilica of Sant'Apollinare in the heart of Rome. She was last seen entering a dark gray BMW with a well-dressed man, whom witnesses said bore a striking resemblance to Enrico Renatino de Pedis, the acting head of Banda della Magliana. Investigators later discovered that the BMW belonged to Flavio Carboni. 2 weeks later, the Orlandi family received a call from a man with a heavy American accent who said, "We have taken the citizen Emanuela Orlandi only because she belongs to the Vatican State. We are not a revolutionary or terror organization. We have never described ourselves as such. We consider ourselves people interested only in liberating would-be papal assassin Acha. The deadline is July 20th. He identified his organization as the Turkish Anti-Christian Liberation Front, a group unknown to Turkish intelligence. The caller said that he would leave an important message regarding the demands of his organization with the Vatican. Several days later, Ercole Orlandi, Emanuela's father, paid a visit to Monsignor Dino Monduzzi, prefect of the Pontifical House, to see if the message had arrived. The prelate at first said no. No one within the Vatican had heard from the kidnappers. Thanks to persistent questioning by Mario Meneguzzi, Emanuela's uncle, Monsignor Monduzzi finally admitted that there had been a call and a message. But absolutely nothing they said or wanted could be understood, the prefect insisted. Between July 10th and July 19th, the American made other calls, some directing the press to locations where they found notes and taped messages from Emanuela. On July 20th, the mysterious caller contacted ANSA, Italy's national news wire service, to say, "Today is the last message before the deadline of the ultimatum expires. Request denied."
So someone kidnaps a girl with an American accent, and they're saying that because that she belongs to the papal or the Pope or the church, that they should have to give them the money, the ransom money.
Throughout the investigation, SISDE, Italy's domestic intelligence service, found the Vatican strangely uncooperative and unwilling to share their conversations with the American. Vincenzo Parisi, the deputy head of SISDE, came to believe that the Holy See had shrouded the Orlandi case by a campaign of sophisticated disinformation. The messages and calls from the representative of the Turkish organization, Parisi said, were episodes of play acting to distract attention from the real heart of the matter. In his confidential report on the mysterious caller, Parisi wrote, "Foreigner, very possible of Anglo-Saxon culture. High intellectual and cultural level. Familiar with the Latin tongue, and it follows of Italian. Member, or in close contact with the ecclesiastical world. Serious, ironic, precise, and orderly in composure, cold, calculating, full of himself, sure of his role and strength, sexually amorphous. Has lived a long period of time in Rome.
Sexually amorphous. They had to throw that in there.
Knows very well all the city zones that have something to do with his activity. well informed about Italian judicial rules, and above all, the logistical structure of the Vatican. The SISDE official went on to write that it was highly plausible that the kidnapping of Emanuela was committed by someone inside the ecclesiastical hierarchy and order, who was closely connected to organized crime figures. Parisi managed to provide this profile because of an intercept that the Italian police had placed on a phone line within the Vatican after the caller demanded access to Secretary of State Casaroli. But Parisi was unable to listen to the conversations between the American caller and Cardinal Casaroli. The tapes, along with the intercept, mysteriously vanished from the Holy See. At Parisi's insistence, the Carabinieri tapped the telephone of Raul Bonarelli, the second highest-ranking officer within the Vatican's Central Office of Vigilance. In one taped conversation with other Vatican officials, Bonarelli said that he had sent boxes of documents on the Orlandi case to the office of Cardinal Casaroli. Parisi and his fellow magistrates sent requests to the Holy See asking permission to interview Casaroli, members of his staff within the Secretariat, and members of the Office of Vigilance about the content of the internal documents. All the requests were denied. Extortion attempt. At the end of July,
Request denied. Is the Pope going to finally get busted? So Smokin' Joe was telling me that he ran into, let's see, little Nicky Scarfo, who was Scarface on a job, and his nephew Phil Leonetti, and he was apparently a part of the Philly mob. Was he Italian? Sounds Italian. Leonetti, yeah, that's definitely. And he lives in Florida now? Huh, interesting. Yeah, we watched the movie. But I don't know how accurate the movie was. Someone would have to tell me. I don't know his history very well.
ANSA reported. In the Vatican, the prevailing opinion is that the people responsible for the kidnapping belong to the world of common crime, and that the proposal for an exchange with AUCA is just an excuse to extort considerable sums of money from the Vatican in exchange for the girl to throw investigators off track. The money, Judge Rosario Priori, a leading magistrate in the case, concluded, belonged to members of Banda della Magliana.
Okay, missed that part earlier today. So they wanted money, and they wanted Aoka out of prison. He went, I think it was 2 or 3 chapters ago, that Aoka was in prison. Aoka is the one who did the attempted assassination on the Pope, John Paul II.
Who had deposited it with Marcinkus and Calvi, only to be left with the kidnapped girl as means of obtaining repayment. The judge estimated that the amount owed to the gang was in excess of $200 million. Testimony of tramps. Years later, Antonio Mancini, Nino the Tramp, a bagman for De Pedis, said that his boss had arranged the kidnapping in order to recoup the millions it had lost in the collapse of Ambrosiano. There was money that had gone missing, Mancini told a reporter from La Stampa, and the choice was between dropping a cardinal by the roadside or striking someone close to the Pope.
Oh.
We chose the second option. Mancini added, "What Judge Priori says about the Orlandi kidnapping is the absolute truth. What puzzles me is the figure of $200 million. Knowing the amount of money that flowed into the gang's activity, and especially the money made by the Testaccio Group, the division of the Banda under De Pedis, I think that $200 million is an insufficient sum." Critical insight into the possible fate of Emanuela came from Sabrini Minardi, the former lover of De Pedis and a high-class call girl. Emanuela, she testified, had been kidnapped by De Pedis, who held her at an apartment on the coastal town of Torvaianica, not far from Rome. Archbishop Marcinkus, Ms. Minardi said, visited Emanuela several times while the schoolgirl remained in captivity. The victim, she continued, was eventually killed and chopped into pieces, and the remains were cast into a cement mixer. In a 2010 interview with Gianluca Di Feo of L'Espresso, Ms. Minardi said that she had ongoing sexual relations with Roberto Calvi and Archbishop Marcinkus. She claimed that she had received a villa in Monte Carlo from Calvi, while Marcinkus provided a Vatican position for one of her relatives. Ms. Minardi added that she had provided Marcinkus with a steady stream of prostitutes and had delivered to him large sums of cash from De Pettis in a Louis Vuitton bag. "I left him the money," she said, "but I kept the bag." As a result of Ms. Minardi's testimony, Roman prosecutors arrested 3 underworld associates of De Pettis for kidnapping and murder: Sergio Virtu, Angelo Cassini, and Gianfranco Carboni. She had identified them as individuals who had assisted De Pettis in arranging the kidnapping and contacting the Vatican with the terms for her release. The payoff.
I forget that I could put X chats up there and YouTube chats. If there's chats that are relevant that we're talking about, guys, I'll add them from Rumble. I'll copy and paste them over. Oh, so you met him when you were a junior. Okay. So in 82, he was saying that Scarface was running things. And that would be kind of interesting because this is about the time that the leadership is kind of is shifting. They're making changes. They're making big changes right now.
Eventually, the investigating magistrates obtained evidence that the Vatican had made the payoff to the Banda in a circuitous manner. In the fall of 1983, L'Opera Francesco Saverio Odosso, a Roman Catholic society dedicated to the works of St. Francis Xavier, sold a luxurious villa surrounded by 24,000 square meters of gardens on the outskirts of Rome to Enrico Nicoletti, the treasurer of the Banda, at the rock-bottom price of 1.2 billion lire, $860,000. 7 years later, the property was appraised at 27 billion lire. The sale had been engineered by Cardinal Ugo Poletti, the vicar of the Diocese of Rome and a member of P2. Nicoletti transformed the villa into a nightclub called the House of Jazz, which received substantial loans from the IOR. Thanks to the sale of the villa, Cardinal Poletti emerged as a leading figure in the case of the missing girl. Poletti, at the time of the kidnapping, had received a great deal of adverse publicity because of his membership in P2 and his alliance with Licio Gelli. He had also received criticism for his advancement of the cause of Opus Dei, a secretive Catholic sect that had served to establish Gladio units throughout Europe. As the vicar of Rome, he presided over the Basilica of Sant Apollinaire, where De Pettis remained a member in good standing. He stood in a unique position to resolve the matter of Emanuela Orlandi and the Banda's demand for repayment of its drug money. A sordid scenario. By 1983, when the villa was sold, most investigators, including Judge Parisi, had come to the conclusion that the kidnapping case revolved around sex and the problem of pedophilia that was mounting within the Holy See. If the matter was simply financial, Archbishop
Was it mounting within the Holy See, or was it already existing and they were using it as a tool to blackmail? I told you guys earlier that the Operation Gladio didn't just sell drugs and weapons. They also blackmail's part of it, and sex trafficking is another part of it.
Bishop Marcinkus would have provided the restitution. If the matter was political, the resolution would have been made by Cardinal Casaroli, the Secretary of State. But the extortion appeared to revolve around a considerably more sinister episode. Rumors had been rampant about the Archbishop Marcinkus's taste for young girls and for sex parties within his private apartments. A scenario was gradually compiled that served to explain the kidnapping, the Vatican's attempts at obstruction, and Cardinal Poletti's participation in the payoff. Emanuela, by this account, had been sexually molested by Marcinkus. When the Banda received news of the incident, they kidnapped the girl in order to blackmail the IOR head for the money they had lost through Ambrosiano. Exposure of the statutory rape would have been devastating in the wake of the Sindona episode, the P2 headlines, the collapse of the Vatican's shell companies, and the strange death of Roberto Calvi. Emanuela represented a $200 million baby. Marcinkus, after personally verifying that the girl was in the Banda's custody, worked through P2 and Cardinal Poletti, not to secure Emanuela's immediate release, but to ensure her perpetual silence. Boxes of bones. On February...
This part, yeah. So, Smoke and Joe over on X was saying that Opus Dei would whip themselves. Yes, Opus Dei, the next chapter, they're going to go into all of, self-flagellism. Not flagism, flagellism. Flagellation. Right? Okay. Anyway, they're going to go into it to the next chapter.
February 2nd, 1990, Enrico de Pettis was gunned down and killed on Via del Pellegrino in Rome. He was buried in a diamond-studded tomb within the Basilica of Sant'Apollinare, a place reserved for popes and cardinals. Perhaps the gangster merited such hallowed interment. He had participated in the killing of Calvi, made peace between the Vatican and the mob by accepting a real estate deal as a cash settlement, and prevented a 15-year-old schoolgirl from creating a scandal that would have rocked the foundation of Holy Mother Church. His place among the saints and ecclesiastical dignitaries was sanctioned by Cardinal Poletti. In 2006, an anonymous caller to Ci l'ha visto, Who Has Seen Them, an Italian current events program, said, "Do you want to solve the Emanuela Orlandi case? Then look inside the tomb of De Pettis." On May 14, 2010, Italian forensic examiners opened the tomb in response to widespread public demand. They discovered that the body of De Pettis remained well preserved. He remained dressed in a dark blue suit with a black tie. Next to his coffin, they also found nearly 200 boxes of bones, which appeared to date from pre-Napoleonic times. They remain under examination.
200 boxes of bones. Pre-Napoleonic times. I'm telling you guys, this sick stuff went on long before World War II. This is when Gladio was officially formed. Yes, these operations were going on throughout the entire world. They were funding both sides of the war. The French Revolution, you had the bank funding both sides in case one or the other won. They were hedging their bets. They did the same thing with in Russia, the Bolsheviks. Why did the Bolsheviks get kicked out? There's a big reason for that. They went over to Germany. Anyway, this group of people has been going around doing this, and they recruit these big time bankers. Yeah, you could call them Illuminati. Can I say that word on YouTube? It's the only thing I dislike. The only thing I dislike about YouTube is if I was just on Rumble and X, I would be saying that word out loud. Yes, the Rothschilds. Yes, not just the Rothschilds. There's a whole. I mean, you had the Mellon family. You had Rothschilds. You had. I don't know. Are either of the Clintons related to those guys? I guess I've never searched their lineage yet. Maybe, but even if they're not that exact same family lineage, they recruit people or they groom people. They teach people from a young age. I mean, think of Clinton. Did he go to school in... I know he went overseas. I know he went to school in Europe, and supposedly he had some roommates that supposedly threw themselves off decks after they moved back to the United States. Those are supposed rumors. We should watch that. Should we watch that? Should we watch after this series is done, guys? We should go and we should watch the Bill and Hillary kill list. I don't know if that's the exact title of it. Very, very interesting documentary. Very interesting. And that's just one family. Yes, the Mellon family. And the Rockefellers, Rothschilds, were the first ones to fund the OSS, and it was supposed to come to a halt after that. It was just supposed to be temporary. Carnegie, yes. It was supposed to be a temporary thing. And these people are like, you know what? That was so awesome having the cover of the United States. So they created the CIA. And that's how the whole recruitment process started. Hey, Mac, welcome. So who do we got new? We've got Macklin. I don't know if I said hi to you, Macklin, but hi. Hi, P Digits. We've got Smokin' Joe. Anyway, guys, I just want to let you know that we got bones that go back to the French Revolution, Napoleon times. This thing, if you just look at the little pieces, there's evidence. People refuse to look at the evidence and they want to make it right versus left. This has never been right versus left. They were just able to make the left, or not necessarily the left, but they were able to create this group of people that were Marxist communist ideals. Were they? Maybe they were. But they used that as an excuse to go after people and to overthrow governments. And it was all in the name of communism. We don't want to be Marxist. We don't want to be like China, right? Who do you think created communism? If this goes clear back to the crucifixion of Jesus Christ, if you believe in those things, which I am religious, I do believe in that, then if it goes clear back to that time, when a group of people were cast out of Jerusalem and were sent to roam the land until the second coming of Christ, they would never have a home of their own. And this group has gone from country to country, infiltrating, overthrowing, placing themselves in high positions of power. And a lot of it's been about money. And the ultimate goal is, since they can't have their own country, they are going to have the whole world, the new world order. They're going to rule the world. And we will have nothing, and we will be happy. That is the ultimate goal. We will own nothing, and we shall be happy. Okay, let's continue on. So we are starting on chapter 20. Guys, I'm getting kind of sad. We're going to have to pick our next book to go through, because we're for sure going to do the one with Traveling Fools on Thursdays. I think that's the night that he said will work for him. So I will still be able to keep my other schedule. And then we will have one fun night of going over the Graham books. Graham Hancock. And I'm excited. So that's just going to be kind of fun. We're going to go over like the Atlantis, and we're going to just go through, was there a different civilization? Is there something else out there that our government's hiding from us? I think it sounds fun. Anyway, yes, but we're going to still stay on this track of Gladio until, I don't know, whatever I feel is going to move us in a direction towards enlightenment and understanding is what I'm going to stay with. And I've also gotten permission. There's a guy, but he goes by the name of Research. I'll have to get his exact name and put it in for you guys to follow him, because he is good. Anyway, listen to the spaces that Bill Elmer does on Saturday nights. This guy has been researching for years. And I asked him one night if I could use his audio for his MK Ultra series, because he goes way deep. It'd be really fun to use those and then add to it and tie that in with Gladio. Because when I was listening to a couple weeks ago, the things he was talking about tied right into Gladio, 100%. 100%. It was awesome. Anyway.
Chapter 20. Works of God. Archbishop Marcinkus had a beautiful apartment in Rome, very comfortable. And then he had lots of young female housekeepers, very young, who needed to make frequent confessions. Licio Gelli. Interview with Philip Whelan, The Vatican at War, 2013. On May 24, 1984, a goodwill payment of $250 million was made by the Vatican to Ambrosiano creditors at the headquarters of the European Trade Association in Geneva. The money for the reparation came from a mysterious deposit made in the IOR by Secretary of State Casaroli in the amount of $406 million. The source of the cash was Opus Dei, Work of God, a deeply conservative Catholic organization that had amassed an estimated $3 billion in assets. In its efforts to prop up the papacy after the damage wrought by the IOR, the organization assumed the lira debt of parochial banks within the Ambrosiano group, including Banca Cattolica del Veneto, Credito Varesino, and Ambrosiano itself, which launched an ill-fated attempt to return from financial ashes as Nuovo Banco Ambrosiano.
Remember that during the Dirty War, Opus Dei played a big role in overthrowing the various different groups in Argentina. The people in Argentina were not going along with the teachings of the Pope at the current time. They believed that they weren't taking care of the poor people. They weren't taking care of the poor like they were supposed to. So I don't know if it was the Archbishop at the time, negotiated with, or was it the Pope? Someone high up in the church got Kissinger and the CIA involved. And I think it was during Nixon's time. Was Nixon in office at the time? Hopefully I'm not messy. I think it was Nixon. Got Nixon involved at the time. And so the Opus Dei and all this, they pretty much send out false propaganda, which is Operation Mockingbird. They would plant pamphlets. So every time they say there was a pamphlet left at the scene of a crime, I'm instantly curious, because this is what they did in South America all the time. They would call them communists. They would plant propaganda. They would go and they spread rumors, and they would blame it on these people. Yes, Opus Dei were Vatican enforcers. So with Opus Dei, they tortured people, and it was horrible. It was horrible. So Opus Dei is involved in that at this exact same time as this other stuff is going on, because that was 78 to... I can't remember my dates, and usually I can remember them off the top of my head. Anyway, it went until 84. So I think, was it 74 to 84?
In exchange for these benefactions, John Paul II granted the sect recognition as a personal prelature. This status ensured that the secret society would answer only to the Pope and the Pope alone. No local bishop could discipline or sanction it. Overnight, Opus Dei emerged as a global ecclesiastical movement without a specific diocese. No organization within the history of the Roman Catholic Church, save the Society of Jesus, had been granted such power. Opus Dei, founded in 1928 by Jose Maria.
Yes, so it was 76 to 83 was the Dirty War. 84 is when they started prosecuting people.
Escriva, a Spanish priest and lawyer. Opus Dei is a movement in which members adhere to the Way, a rigorous daily order prescribed by Escriva that includes Mass, devotional readings, private prayer, and physical mortification, self-flagellation with whips and chains.
So me not being of the Catholic faith, whenever you see a movie where you see a priest whipping himself, I just thought that they were the celibate priests doing that to torture themselves. I didn't realize that there was a separate sect of the church that did that, and it was the Opus Dei. Opus Dei goes against, is it carnage? Carnage? Anyway, it goes against their laws. Their bylaws, if you want to call them, or their belief system, because they're not supposed to have any secret societies.
To subdue the flesh. The numeraries, single lay members within the order, make a commitment of celibacy and live within centers. They maintain private sector employment and donate their income to the movement, opting to live on a modest stipend. The supernumeraries are married couples who maintain the Way together within their private domiciles. The movement also includes associates, single people who cannot live in centers because of other obligations, such as caring for their elderly parents, and cooperators, single or married individuals who contribute a lion's share of their income to Opus Dei, but have not yet adopted the divine vocation of daily spiritual regimentation. Despite Opus Dei's espousal of an intransigent obedience to Catholic doctrine, the movement violates a cardinal tenet of canon law by remaining a secret society, like Freemasonry. Opus Dei does not publish its membership list, and members, according to the movement's 1950 constitution, are forbidden to reveal their adherence to the movement without the express permission of their superiors. Fount of Fascism. Much of what is known about the sect comes from John Roche, a professor at Oxford University, who left the order and broke his pledge of secrecy. In an essay titled The Inner World of Opus Dei, Roche writes, "Internally, it is totalitarian and imbued with fascist ideas turned to religious purposes, ideas which were surely drawn from the Spain of its early years. It is virtually a cult in spirit, a law unto itself, totally self-centered, grudgingly accepting Roman authority because it still considers Rome orthodox." By 1984, when the reparation was made, Opus Dei had become a $3 billion enterprise, controlling 600 newspapers, 52 radio and television stations, 12 film companies, and 38 news agencies. Prominent Americans who became affiliated with the movement included CIA Director William Casey, William Simon of Citicorp, Francis X. Stankard of Chase Manhattan, and Sargent Shriver, a former Democratic candidate for vice president. David Kennedy of Continental Illinois, albeit a Mormon, became a conspicuous
Albeit a Mormon, I love it.
friend of the sect, since his bank was a leading shareholder of an Opus Dei bank in Barcelona. The CIA funding. Because Opus Dei was vehemently anti-communist, in 1971 the CIA began to funnel millions into its coffers to thwart the growth of liberation theology in Latin America. Much of this money ended up at the Chilean Institute for General Studies, IGS, an Opus Dei think tank. The members of IGS included prominent lawyers, free market economists, and executives from influential publications. The leader of IGS was Hernán Cubillos, founder of Que Pasa, an Opus Dei magazine and publisher of El Mercurio, the largest newspaper in Santiago and one that received CIA subsidies. The coup against the democratically elected regime of Salvatore Allende was planned within the corridors of the Chilean think tank. After the coup, IGS technocrats became the new cabinet ministers, and Cubillos emerged as a foreign minister. Throughout the 1980s, the CIA made use of Opus Dei's Milites Christi, Soldiers of Christ, as a primary force.
Okay, Opus Dei, they made use, so the CIA made use of the Soldiers of Christ, which were Opus Dei. Remember, I told you they played a big role in South America as well, like a huge role.
Force in Poland. The numeraries and supernumeraries provided ongoing support for Solidarity, which, by some accounts, reached nearly $1 billion by the end of the decade. Opus Dei also organized courses, seminars, and conferences to indoctrinate Polish teachers, scholars, and economists in the tenets of Western democracy and the plans of a unified Europe, as envisioned by the Council on Foreign Relations and the...
So the Pope that they got from Poland, John Paul II, they had done the same thing. So that he'd gone to school and he was taught in the Western ways, which meant that he would go along to get along with everything. So anti-communist, would go along with everything that Gladio was going to do and the shadow government or the international syndicate.
And the Trilateral Commission, in the wake of the imminent collapse of the USSR. How much money the CIA provided to Opus Dei remains a mystery. The CIA refuses to release any records regarding its relationship to the secret sect on the grounds that any disclosure would undermine national security. As plans got underway for Opus Dei to take control of the Vatican's finances in order to ward off a future debacle, the CIA was forced to bring closure to other matters, including the case of Michele Sindona, the man who knew too much.
The man
Presidential pleas.
who knew
In a
too
letter
much.
of September 1st, 1981, Sindona had petitioned President Reagan for a presidential pardon. In the letter, the mafiosi reminded Reagan that he had served as a central figure in the Western anti-communist struggle and had purchased the Rome Daily American on behalf of the CIA to prevent it from falling into the hands of the left. The mafia financier further informed the president that he had worked with Graham Martin, the U.S. ambassador to Italy, to create a media center that would produce an ongoing flood of anti-communist propaganda. As a result of this effort, P2 gained control of Corriere della Sera, Italy's leading daily newspaper, and the entire Rizzoli publishing group. "I have only fought for democracy and justice," Sindona wrote, "and for this I have been persecuted." He ended the letter with the caustic phrase, "And this is what happens to a friend of the United States." And the closing, "Respectfully yours, Michele Sindona." David Kennedy, Nixon's former Secretary of the Treasury and Sindona's longtime friend, personally delivered the letter to the White House. 11 months later, Sindona, who had been transferred from a lockup in Springfield, Missouri, to the federal prison in Otisville, New York, received a reply from President Reagan's lawyer, Fred F. Fielding. "Thank you very much for your petition," Fielding wrote. "I have taken the liberty of forwarding your material to Mr. David Stevenson, acting pardon attorney." Sindona waited over a year for a response from Stevenson. When no word came, he took pen in hand and dashed off a note to former President Richard Nixon. Sindona reminded Nixon of their many meetings and of the financial help he had provided Nixon in the struggle against communism. "I now turn to you for assistance," he wrote. Sindona received no reply. He next asked Randolph Guthrie, Nixon's former law partner, to approach the former president on his behalf. Once again, his plea was ignored. Nixon had told Guthrie that any assistance he offered Sindona would only further damage his public image. Following the trial. In addition to 25 years in prison for his role in the collapse of Franklin National, Sindona had been sentenced on April 20, 1981, to 2.5 years for bail jumping and perjury. Johnny Gambino, Rosario Spatola, Vincenzo Spatola, and Dr. Joseph Michele Crimi were named as unindicted co-conspirators. In the course of the bail-jumping investigation, John Kenney and his team of federal prosecutors retraced the route of the kidnapping and discovered that Sindona had spent several weeks at the villa of Rosario Spatola's father-in-law in Torretta, not far from Palermo. The Spatolas, the prosecutors came to realize, were one of the 4 mafia families forming a transatlantic colossus. The Cherry Hill Gambinos were another. This explained the participation of John and Rosario Gambino in the staged abduction. The Inzerillos, the closest of all Sicilian clans to Stefano Bontade, were the third. Bontade was a member of P2, and his brother-in-law, Giacomo Vitale, another Freemason, had arranged Sindona's travel. The fourth were the DiMaggios of Palermo and southern New Jersey. Sindona's Familia.
So the people who helped Sindona escape, which was it 2 chapters ago, are now co-conspirators, and they're also on the hook right now.
In Palermo, Kenny and company came to learn that Salvatore Inzerillo, Sicily's leading heroin smuggler, served as the capo di tutti capi of this extended crime family, a position he assumed after Rosario DiMaggio died of a heart attack. Inzerillo and his sister were married to Spatolas. Salvatore's uncle Antonio, along with his cousin and namesake in New Jersey, were married to Gambinos. His cousin, Tommaso, was a brother-in-law of John Gambino, who was married to a different Gambino. The Sicilian clan inhabited the Passo di Regano section of Palermo. The American clan lived in Cherry Hill, New Jersey. Describing the inner dimensions of the four families, Italian prosecutor Giusto Sciacchitano wrote, "These four families form a single clan unlike anything in Italy or the United States, the most potent family in Cosa Nostra. John Gambino is the converging point in the United States for all of the group's activities in Italy and the final destination for its drug shipments. Salvatore Inzerillo has emerged as the Gambino brothers' principal interlocutor, the central personage in Sicily with myriad interests and heavy capital investments. Rosario Spatola is just below them in the structure. Stefano Bontade was an integral member of the clan. Through his ties with P2, the extended family gained the protection of Prime Minister Giulio Andreotti and, in turn, the CIA. The drug bust. During his stay in Sicily, Kenny and his fellow prosecutors received word of Salvatore Inzerillo's latest heroin shipments to New York. They contacted agents of the Drug Enforcement Administration, DEA, who intercepted 5 kilos of heroin packed in talcum powder meant for John and Rosario Gambino. The next shipment came from Sicily inside a truckload of lemons, which were then driven to Milan, where the 91 pounds of heroin were packed inside a cargo container filled with Italian pop music albums and shipped off to the Gambino brothers in the Big Apple. When the second shipment reached the United States, the police moved in on the Gambinos. In March 1980, John and Rosario were arrested in their restaurant, Valentino's, for alleged participation in an international heroin smuggling operation. They were acquitted of those charges, but more than 60 members of the Sicilian Mafia were eventually convicted in the case. Inzerillo's end.
It's almost as though they're trying, so it's almost like they're trying to close this angle up. Remember that they had the Golden Crescent where they moved the poppy fields to that Afghanistan, Pakistan, Iran area the Golden Crescent goes just like that under that area. And that was 78 and 79 when they had the droughts. So they moved it from the Golden Triangle to that area. They've got everything going on in South America. So they've got poppy fields in South America, and they've got the cartels running drugs in and out. I wonder if because the cartel got exposed, if now they're kind of cleaning house and getting everybody in control, especially with the arrest of Sandino and Gelli, finding all of, and that is Gelli, with them finding all of Gelli's documents implicating over 900 people being a part of P2, which are all part of this whole Gladio operation. They weren't able to get enough information for the higher ups, yet they tried really, really hard to do so. So I'm wondering if all of this drug busting and all this stuff is it an honest person just trying to do the right thing, or is it, because I just assumed that if it was the international syndicate, they'd find a way to make it right. Or it's kind of like the cartels and the mafia. If you screw them over and you steal money, they're going to let you hang out to dry. They're not going to go after you.
The bust produced profound repercussions in Sicily. A substantial amount of the confiscated.
Smoke and Joe, you've got to go back and listen to the whole entire Gladio, because the cartels were not loose cannons. The cartels were created by this international syndicate. They did, there was gangs that existed. However, they created these cartels because they needed someone to run the heroin and the cocaine from South America up into the United States. That is why we have a problem. And I'm a firm believer that right now, the reason why that we have a fentanyl problem and not a heroin problem is because they found a way to manufacture it and make it synthetic. And a lot of our drug manufacturing companies come from Taiwan. And I haven't done research on Taiwan yet. And I don't know how they play a role, but just kind of let that sink in and kind of think about that. Is there a link there? I'm not saying there is or there isn't. However, I'm kind of curious. I've heard Colonel Townsend Towner, talk about it a couple of times on her show and through her different X spaces. Anyway, so yeah, the cartels could be a loose cannon, but they were created by this international syndicate. This is why they're not getting rid of them. That whole during the Clinton administration, not Clinton administration, but just before he ran for governor, he was helping with all of this stuff. Clinton has been up to this eyeball since he was in college. I think they groomed him to be in the position he was in, and him and Obama are a huge reason. Well, okay, we can go on and on about all the presidents that played a role in this. There were several of them for a very long time. In my eyes, there's only been two good ones, and that was Trump and that was JFK and maybe Abraham Lincoln. That's about it.
Confiscated heroin belonged to the Corleonesi, the crime family of Calogero Vizzini, Don Calo, which was now headed by Luciano Leggio and Salvatore Toto Riina. The two capos demanded compensation for their loss, but Salvatore Inzerillo refused to cough up a dime. As men of respect, Leggio and Riina were bound to retaliate. Stefano Bontade was gunned down on April 23, 1981, while stopped at a traffic light in his Alfa Romeo. Salvatore Inzerillo was next. He was murdered on May 11th as he was about to step into his bulletproof car, after leaving the house of his mistress. What followed was a bloodbath. During 1981 and 1982, more than 200 members of the Inzerillo extended family became victims of the Lupara Bianca, white shotgun, a killing done in such a way that the body is never found, while the Corleonesi suffered no casualties. Thanks in part to the antics of Sindona, the clan had lost the protection of the Italian government and the overlords of Gladio. By the end of 1982, 72 men of respect with ties to Salvatore Inzerillo went on trial in Palermo, and warrants were issued for over 50 more soldati.
Okay, so Smoke and Joe said that by the mid-'80s, they were getting out of hand. So we had the Dirty War, which is about this time they were setting up all the cartels. So that was 76 to 83 is when they were trying to get everything set up. And I'm going to say that infighting, 100% infighting with the different cartels. That's what you meant. Okay, yes. Definitely going after territory. And I don't know which ones were blessed by the international syndicate. I'm assuming that not all of them were. And if you were one of the ones that were not, I guarantee that they were taken care of, if you know what I mean. Exactly. That's what you meant. Okay, that makes more sense.
Soldiers and business associates, including Sindona. To top it off, the multi-billion-dollar Gambino, Inzerillo, Spatola holdings were seized by the state. Loss of family. Sindona had lost his family, and matters for the mafia financier continued to get worse. In addition to the charge of operating a $600 million a year heroin business between Sicily and the United States, he was charged with illegal possession of firearms, using a false passport, and violating currency regulations. To top it all off, he was also indicted for ordering the execution of Giorgio Ambrosiano, the chief bank investigator who tried to uncover the Vatican's connection to the mafia.
Yep.
On January 25, 1982, Sindona was indicted in Palermo, Sicily, along with 75 members of the Gambino, Inzerillo, and Spatola crime families. The indictment sprang from his ill-fated faked kidnapping and the trail he had blazed for investigators to follow, a trail that led from New York to Palermo. In the fall of 1982, after the raid on Gelli's villa and the collapse of Banco Ambrosiano, Sindona finally broke and began to prattle from his cell at Otisville. He told Jonathan Beatty, a reporter from Time, money was given to political parties, but money was sometimes under the table. Calvi feared his trips to South America because the communists, the Cubans, knew that Calvi with Gelli were building rightist strength in South America. That was our goal. Sandino went on to talk not only about the Vatican's subversive attempts to gain control of Ambrosiano, but also about his involvement in P2 and the secret society's support for right-wing guerrilla units.
Okay, money was given to politicians and not through legal channels. This is what I was talking about, especially when you get the higher up, like prime ministers and presidents of other countries. What ends up happening is there ends up being a soft coup or a hard coup. And who helps them? Gladio soldiers. So when they get the correct person put into place, they are said, hey, you get into office, which they pretty much ensure that they're going to be in there. We're going to give you this much money. Okay. In return for that much money, now this prime minister or president is now bought and paid for. They must do as this international syndicate dictates, or at least certain things. So one of those things is to let them set up industry, bring in shops, bring in Chevrolet, not just car, but just think of all of the factories. Think of all of the resources or all the companies that we as the United States have shipped off to other countries for cheaper labor. Why? Because what they'll do is they'll go over, take over their industry. They will impoverish their countries, and they will pay the citizens pennies on the dollar to go work a job that the United States doesn't want to do. Therefore, they can increase their profits. This is why other countries are angry at us all the time, because we're imperialist. And it's not, and I don't want to say us. Okay. And that's what they think, as everyday citizens like me and you are the ones that are doing this, and that we're greedy and we're selfish. When really it's this international syndicate that puts these businesses and these corporations into place, make them poor, ruin their communities, and they'll bring in, if people protest, they'll bring in a Gladio force and make it look like the other side, and they will kill people, just like they did with Haiti, with Barbecue, who actually was a good, not saying what he did was right, but he was a cop. Barbecue was a cop. He stopped being a cop because they were corrupt. They were doing horrible, they were taking money to fight and kill people. So he left. But this is what we've done. This whole entire group of people. So for them to say that there was money going to politicians under the table is not a far cry. It's very realistic, and it didn't stop when they had the trials. It didn't stop. They just gave it a different name. That's all they did, was give it a different name. That's why you have to look up hard coup and soft coup when you're doing your own research. And I encourage you guys to do your own research. Just as a reminder, this is Paul Williams. The book is free on Audible. It is free on Audible. You can listen to it. All of the whole entire series is surreal is a good word. Yeah, surreal is a really good word. Don't take my word for it. However, I've fact checked this book. I've used Brave, I've used DuckDuckGo, and I've used Google. And there's only one person I couldn't find, and I guarantee that he was deep in there or maybe still alive. I found his name, just no pictures, no lineage, nothing.
Taking the bait. Alarms were sounded. The CIA dispatched Carlo Rocchi, one of its Italian agents, to monitor Sandino's behavior within the federal prison. Rocchi gained the mafia financier's trust by presenting him with an affidavit from the Department of Justice. The affidavit said that Rocchi was a reliable person and that President Reagan was prepared to grant Sandino a full pardon. Sandino could not believe that such an affidavit from a reliable government official would be bogus. He took the bait and refrained from making further.
I'm going to be a spoiler alert, alarmist, guys. This is going to be a spoiler. They're going to lie to him. Sorry, I thought it was funny when I was listening to it earlier.
Their statements until September 24th, 1984, when the U.S. Justice Department issued the order for his extradition to Milan. Upon hearing the news, Sandino went ballistic. He said, "If I finally get there, no one does me in first, and I've already heard talk of giving me a poisoned cup of coffee. I'll make my trial into a real circus. I'll tell everything. On September 25th, Sandino was transported to the Rebibbia prison in Rome, where he was placed in the maximum security cell that had been occupied by Mehmet Ali Aoka. 5 days later, he was moved to the Casa Circondariale Femminile in Voghera, on the outskirts of Milan, where he became the sole male inmate in a women's prison. Voghera, a maximum security facility, was trumpeted.
Is that where that idea came from? It started clear back in the 80s of having a male and a female prison? Huh. Interesting.
As a supercarcere or super prison. Barely 4 years old, it was the first fully electronic penitentiary in Europe. Spilling his guts. While awaiting trial, Sandino made contact with Nick Tosches, an American journalist who penned articles for the New York Times, Rolling Stone, and the Village Voice. When the reporter arrived at Voghera, the caged Don began to spill his guts. He spoke of matters that never before had been revealed to the press, including the U.S. government's protection of the drug trade and how they had allowed dirty money to accumulate in the hands of a few men. Sandino maintained that U.S. agencies, such as the President's Commission on Organized Crime, functioned not to find dirty money, but rather to create it. He added that such agencies often captured intermediaries in the drug trade, but never the real crime lords who had become the world's establishment. Sandino spoke of jelly, P2, and the fear of an Italian communist dictatorship that gave rise to the strategy of tension. He said that he sent regular reports on developments within the Italian Communist Party to U.S. Ambassador Martin and the White House. And
there's a stopping point. Yes, so Singlaut says this, with all of this that they're doing right now, they're charging Trump with playing together is surreal. Playing together? Singlaut, I don't know if you've been here earlier when I've talked about this. People always accuse Trump of not trying to drain this swamp. Who is the real swamp? Well, it starts with the international syndicate, which is the industrial war complex. So you have to get rid of them first, okay? So he was doing things. Withdrawing from Afghanistan recently was one way of doing that because they were supplying weapons to both sides. They were also getting liquid, what is it called? Anyway, they were getting liquid morphine from there. They called it liquid heroin, which is just morphine. So he did that, okay? He was trying to figure out why we were in Syria, and General Flynn was looking into that, and that was the big reason as to why General Flynn got outed like he did. So you'd have to watch the movie Flynn. I want to stream it. I'm going to ask permission to be able to stream it, but right now he's making money off of it, so I won't do that until I get permission. Because that movie is moving, and you understand the lengths that these people will go to remove you from office. They will threaten your children. They will threaten your children with lawsuits. They will destroy your companies. General Flynn had a private company where he was I don't know if it was a security detail or, oh my gosh, what exactly was it? I don't know if it was investigators. I kept the details. I'm just having a brain fart. But he had a business where he'd go into other countries, and I think, or was it his son? Dang it, now I can't remember. I'm gonna need to buy it instead of rent it so I can rewatch it. But they go after them. Trump closed the border. He closed the border. What that does is it disrupts human trafficking. It disrupts drugs coming in and out of the country, weapons coming in and out of the country, people you don't want in the United States coming in and out of the country. That was disrupting them. What else did he do? He defunded WPATH, which used to be called PATH, and they renamed it. You're looking for attempt number 3. They renamed it to WPATH. Right. So you have the local path, and what that is the reproductive stuff that they're doing, medical freedoms for children, abortions, yada, yada, yada. Bill Gates, the BMG Foundation, donated $52.3 million around 2020 to that foundation. Okay, they were sterilizing people. They were taking babies out of people that were too far along when they didn't want to and sterilizing them. They were doing awful things. So Trump was doing a lot of things. In 2 years, he apprehended more human traffickers than Obama did in 8 years. 8 years. 2 years. Someone's like, this chart is not. So I posted a chart of it. They're like, this chart's not sufficient. I'm like, the chart shows exactly what it's supposed to. Is that in 2 years, Trump apprehended more traffickers. When I say traffickers, you know what I'm talking about. So I don't want to say it on YouTube, which is dumb. This is so dumb that you have to censor your words. People just shouldn't watch certain things. Anyway, I got totally off track, and I don't know whose question. Oh, it was saying a lot. Yes, the fact that this group of people have done all of this stuff, and they're going after Trump. Why? Because he's not playing ball. And General Flynn, why did they destroy his life? Because he knows them in and out. He was actually doing real investigations, and he wouldn't lie when he was doing his reports in front of Congress, and they altered his testimony, and he wouldn't lie. So he was destroyed. But yet he's not, because I never knew who Flynn really was. I just heard of him. I didn't really care to whatever. I didn't care one way or another. And I was like, I don't know, maybe so. So I watched his movie, and I almost cried after it. The things that he's been through since Trump was in office. So what did that start in 2016? I can't remember when Flynn got put into, I think it was the first of his presidency. And when they got Flynn out of the way, then they started going after Trump for impeachment and manipulating data. Anyway, I don't know why I had to go off on that rant. I apologize.
And he talked about the Vatican and the IOR's involvement in laundering dirty money. If you wish, you can go right now to Milan or to Rome with $1 million, $10 million in cash, with me or some other Italian who knows his way around. In a matter of minutes, we would find any number of persons or organizations offering us their services to transfer the money abroad, in nero, without risk. 10 minutes later, you would have confirmation that your money has been credited to you in the currency of your choice in Switzerland, Austria, or the Bahamas, minus a service fee. The Pope's Bank, the IOR, had been involved in such services since its founding. In general, the IOR catered to other banks, whose more privileged clients sought the added security and secrecy offered by Vatican channels. The IOR would open a running account with the Italian credit bank that wanted to export lire in nero. The client of the Italian bank would deposit the lire in cash in that account, and the IOR would credit to him abroad in the currency and the bank of his choice. In the process, the IOR would deduct a commission that was slightly higher than the going rate. The Banca d'Italia and the other authorities never interfered, as they were convinced that the Holy See, if pressed, would respond that, being a sovereign foreign government, it was not under obligation to furnish any information to Italy. But Sandino was not completely candid with Tosches. Still clinging to the hope that the powerful political leaders he had served, including Prime Minister Andreotti, would effect his release. He did not speak of his pivotal roles in such enterprises as establishing the heroin trade between the Sicilian and American mafias, implementing the strategy of tension with the millions of dollars he had received from Ambassador Martin, creating massive financial holes for the disappearance of billions in cash, commissioning the killing of Giorgio Ambrosiano, and planning his own bizarre kidnapping. He also neglected to mention his long-standing ties with the CIA in a covert operation called Gladio. It was best, he thought, not to play all his aces.
Hold on.
Trusting a mole.
Hey, Smoking Joe, since you're over on X, if at any time X is freezing up, will you let me know? The chat is being weird. It's still letting me see. I can see your messages going through over on my other app, but I don't see them in the chat. Anyway, just please let me know. Yeah, OxyContin. Yep, they came with Oxy. Yeah, we're gonna have a discussion about this. Okay, I am pushing play. I have my earbud in, so I'm going to hear everything, but I do have to run to the girls' room real quick. I'll do it quick.
Weeks before his trial for fraudulent bankruptcy, Sandino began to receive visits from P2 members who no doubt reminded him, once again, of his oath of secrecy to the lodge, and of how the Masonic Society was able to arrange Jelly's miraculous escape from the Champ d'Olon prison in Switzerland. Sandino became subdued and underwent a change of mind about turning his trial into a circus. When the trial began on December 12, 1984, the mafia financier requested it proceed without his presence in the courtroom. The strange request was granted. On the Ides of March 1985, he was sentenced to 12 years in prison. The prosecutor, Guido Viola, calling Sandino one of the most dangerous criminals in judicial history, had asked for 15 years. Sandino's trial for the murder of Ambrosiano began on June 4, 1985. It would drag on for 9 months, since the lead witness, William Arrico, whom Sandino had hired to make the hit, had died during an alleged escape attempt from a New York jail. In a letter to Rocchi dated February 5, 1986, Sandino wrote, "I want to talk about scandalous matters that constitute grave moral and penal irregularities about which I have remained silent until now, to maintain the professional reserve to whom I have always wished to be faithful." Rocchi responded by writing, "Let the great battle against you-know-who begin, and let me have all the necessary documents. Take care not to forget anything, neither the national aspects nor the USA ones." Sandino, still unaware that Rocchi was a CIA agent, surrendered all of his notes and documents. Rocchi patted the prisoner on the shoulder and gave him solemn assurance that his release was imminent, despite the verdict in the murder trial. Sandino believed him. The tortellini is good. When Tascius paid a visit to the prison on May 8th, he saw immediately that Sandino looked much better than he had in the fall. His brown eyes were bright, the reporter noted, and he had obviously gained some needed weight. He expressed no fear of the verdict and offered no lament of his fate. Instead, he patted his stomach and said, "The tortellini is good in this town." On March 18, 1986, Mercator Senesis Romanum Curiam, the leading banker of the Roman Curia, was sentenced to spend the rest of his life in prison. He was sent back to the prison at Voghera. 3 television cameras were installed in Sandino's solitary cell to monitor his every move. A cadre of 12 guards, working in shifts of 2, kept watch over him night and day. His food was prepared in a special kitchen by chefs under stringent supervision. Mi hanno avvelenato. On March 20th, Sandino rose from his cot to take breakfast. As always, his plastic plate and pressed foam coffee cup were sealed. It was 8:30. He carried the coffee cup with him through the door that led to the toilet. Minutes later, the Mafia Don emerged from the bathroom, his shirt covered with vomit, his face convulsed with horror. "Mi hanno avvelenato," he screamed. "They have poisoned me." These were his last words. Sandino was rushed to a nearby hospital, where he was found to be in an irreversible coma. A lethal dosage of potassium cyanide was detected in his blood. That afternoon, a priest administered extreme unction. 48 hours later, Michele Sandino, the man known as St. Peter's banker, was dead. His death was only to be expected. The Gladio agents possessed the keys to every prison. They could manage the escape of Aoka from a cell in Turkey and Jelly from a jail in Switzerland. They could arrange the jailhouse deaths of Henri Arsan of Stibam and General Santovito of SISMI. And they could poison the coffee of a celebrated mafiosi who remained in solitary confinement within a maximum security prison.
Yep.
Archbishop's arrest warrant.
Okay, did you hear that? They had all the keys to everything. They could get someone out of a max security prison. They could poison someone that was in solitary confinement. in a max security prison. Who else do we know of that had that happen in Florida that ran the island? I don't think I can say that name on this show. So you guys know who I'm talking about. If you don't, you guys need to read some books.
There were more matters for damage control. The goodwill payment to Ambrosiano creditors from the coffers of Opus Dei did not close the criminal probe of the massive bank collapse. On February 26, 1987, the investigating magistrates concluded that the Vatican Bank had acted as an umbrella for Roberto Calvi's illicit transactions, that it owned a substantial share of Banco Ambrosiano, as well as the dummy corporations, and that it was responsible for the theft of $1.75 billion. Arrest warrants were issued for the three top IOR officials, Archbishop Paul Marcinkus, Luigi Mannini, and Pellegrino del Strobel. The arrests were not made. To protect its officials, the Vatican pointed to Article 11 of the Lateran Treaty of 1929 that served to regulate matters between the Holy See and Italy. The article stipulated that there should be no interference by the Italian government in the central institutions of the Catholic Church. Italy's highest court upheld this stipulation and ruled that Marcinkus and his two associates could not be arrested and brought to trial in Italy. The three Vatican bankers remained safe from extradition within the sanctity of the sovereign state of Vatican City. Marcinkus remained under papal protection until 1991, when he took up residence in Sun City, Arizona.
Yep.
Italian authorities throughout the next decade attempted to persuade U.S. officials to return the archbishop to Italy so he could face a jury. But such efforts proved fruitless. The U.S. Justice Department made the strange ruling that Marcinkus possessed a Vatican passport and could not be extradited to Italy even though his crimes took place on Italian soil.
Okay.
No one in the CIA wanted the gorilla to testify in court about his ties to P2 and the Sicilian Mafia, nor about the transfer of funds to Solidarity, the opponents of liberation theology, and the right-wing regimes in Latin America. And so he stayed sheltered from justice not within Vatican City but Sun City, Arizona, where he joined a prestigious country club, played daily rounds of golf, and smoked expensive cigars. He died of undisclosed causes on February 20th, 2006.
Died in 2006. Yeah, I don't know. He could have been just gotten old. Interesting, though, how they allowed Calvi and Sandino. So Calvi was unalived off a bridge. Sandino was poisoned in solitary confinement. And they let Marcinkus off. Wonder, he must have had a lot of dirt, or I don't know. That's very interesting. But he knew everything. He knew everything about every pope because he was the right hand to the pope. He was his protector. He had access to all their banking transactions, all their money, all the people in the, gosh, I wonder if he would even be tied in with JFK because he was in place at that time. I wonder if, because you remember there was this is just my theory, we had the one pope that, not the pope, priest that helped be the translator for JFK during the Cold War to put an end to the Cold War. And I've always firmly believed that that was how the International Syndicate or the CIA knew the goings on of what JFK was doing because he had a very closed network. He had a direct line to Russia or the Soviet Union at the time. He also would only use his brother. He wouldn't go through normal channels, and it made them mad because they didn't know what he was going to do. Anyway, but I wonder if Marcinkus would have known all that stuff. I would love to I bet he didn't write anything down. It's against the rules to write anything down if you're part of P2.
The gold bars. In 1987, Licio Gelli turned himself over to Swiss authorities in South America, claiming that he was at the end of his tether and suffering from heart problems. He surrendered only after negotiating the terms of his return to Italy. He would be charged only with financial offenses. After serving less than 2 months behind bars, Jelly complained of deteriorating health and was released on parole. In 1992, he was sentenced to 18 years in prison for his involvement in the Ambrosiano affair.
Wow.
The sentence was reduced to 12 years upon appeal. For the next 6 years, Jelly remained under house arrest, detenzione domiciliare, at his luxurious villa in Tuscany. In 1998, when the police came to transport him to a public facility, Jelly disappeared again. In the villa, police discovered 363 pounds of gold bars buried in patio flower pots among his geraniums and begonias. The Grand Master of P2 had stolen the gold from the Yugoslavian government while operating the rat lines for the Nazis.
You know what? I'm for these guys who are expert criminals, I'm just really surprised they do not plant endangered species in their yard of plants. Why not just plant endangered plants in your yard? Then they can't dig them up.
The New Order. In the reorganization of the Vatican finances under Opus Dei that got underway in 1989, a new 5-member supervisory board of lay experts was set up at the IOR. Its president was Angelo Caloia, head of the Medio Credito Lombardo Bank.
Okay, so right now, if they're talking about 89, the Cold War is fixing to come to an end. If you guys know anything about Gladio or the International Syndicate, they're already 100 steps ahead. They already got their plan already set in place. So when they say the new order, things are going to start getting restructured. They're going to have new plans. They're going to have new people in charge. That's just how they roll. However, instead of it being about communism, they're going to start turning it to the war on terror. And I don't think they're going to get into all of the stuff in the Middle East in this chapter, but next time we will.
The vice president was Philippe Devec. The other 3 were Dr. Jose Sanchez Asiain, former chairman of Banco Bilbao, Thomas Pietzker, a director of the Deutsche Bank, and Thomas Misiosi, an American businessman. The new managing director of the IOR was Giovanni Bodio, also from Medio Credito Lombardo. Caloia and Bodio were associated with Giuseppe Garofano, the one-time chairman of Monte di Son and president of Ferruzzi Finanziaria S.p.A., Italy's second-largest industrial firm. Garofano, an Opus Dei supernumerary, served with Caloia on the Vatican's Ethics and Finance Committee until 1993, when he was arrested in connection with a $94 million political kickback scheme. Known as Clean Hands, the scheme involved the kickback millions flowing through the St. Serafino Foundation, an account Garofano set up at the IOR. Jose Sanchez Asiain was a disciple of Bishop Alvaro del Portillo, who served as the general president of Opus Dei. Although Thomas Misiosi may not have been a member of Opus Dei, he shared its reactionary ideology. Misiosi was a knight of the Sovereign Military Order of Malta, along with Secretary of State Haig, CIA Director Casey, Treasury Secretary William Simon, Licio Gelli, former CIA Director John McCone, Prescott Bush Jr., brother of George H.W. Bush, President Reagan's National Security Advisor William P. Clark, Deputy CIA Director General Vernon A. Walters, and Count Alexandre de Marange, the founder of the Safari Club. Thomas Pietzker was a last-minute replacement for Hermann Abs, the head of the Deutsche Bank and Pietzker's boss. Abs had been forced to resign from the committee due to the outcry from the Simon Wiesenthal Center in Los Angeles about his role as Hitler's banker and a director of IG Farben, which ran its own slave labor camp at Auschwitz. After the war, Abs was placed in charge of allocating funds from the Marshall Plan to German industry. This position made him a pivotal figure in the establishment of Gladio. Abs, like Misiosi, was a knight of the SMOM. The finances of Holy Mother Church were now in the hands of a secret Catholic society that remained in the service of the CIA and a clandestine group of global economists.
Okay, they're going to get into the stuff that's going to start being post war on communism, because the Cold War is coming to an end. So we will end it there. However, we're going to cover just one thing briefly. Let's see, share this tab instead so I don't forget when I close this other thing out. So anyway, so you guys all heard, hey, did I say hi to Mr. Duggar already? I hope I did. Did I say hi? Jeb is weak. Yeah. Hello. Hello, dogs. How are you? Welcome. Welcome, welcome. All right. So, because I feel like this situation goes right up Gladio's alley, we're going to pull up this article really quickly. Let's go to this window. Okay. So, yesterday, Slovakia's Prime Minister Robert Fico was shot 4 to 6 times. His security detail was not doing his job. Okay, so I think he had 5 or 6 people. I knew you were dogs, Bob APAC. I don't know why I forget that. You guys need to use your same name. I'm such a gomer. Hey, O'Malley, welcome. Okay, let's get to this. I'm sorry. I know that it's you. I'm just silly. I love that you're in here. You're awesome. I know the chat's being really weird for me as well. I can only see your chats on when they go through on my StreamYard, and I don't want to refresh it because I don't want to lose anything. Okay, so you guys all know that. So the Prime Minister had really good security. He was shot 4 to 5 times. He had emergency surgery yesterday, and I think that I can't even remember all the things that it ended up piercing. So my question is, was he gladioed? No one on his secret detail jumped in front of the gunman, and it was a lone gunman. And so as of yesterday morning, this is when I wrote this, he was in critical condition. The shooter is, you can see right here, is 71-year-old liberal, part of pro-Ukrainian party. He said he shot the prime minister because he didn't like his policy. Recently, the prime minister rejected the WHO pandemic treaty along with lots of other things. He didn't want to send money to Ukraine anymore. You know what? He started being a nationalist. He started putting his country and his people first, and they did not like that. They've also compared the prime minister to Donald Trump, and that source is redacted. They do have a video. I should have posted a link to the video. Geez, apparently got an offensive post to this comment. Anyway, let's pull this up right here. So this is Slovakia, and it was like over here where it happened. And everyone in that area absolutely positively loved him. So it wasn't like, I mean, they compared him to Trump. Think of everyone that's been compared to Trump that is in office, and you can start connecting the dots a little bit. But I want to go to, I'm glad that my timeline doesn't have anything naughty on it to get me banned by accident. Let's see. No, that was last night. Got to scroll upward, not downward. However, Colonel Towner had a really good write-up, but it's not long like the last one I did. So I'm just going to read it from here. Okay, so this is hers. So that was my information. And then let's go through hers because she is quite brilliant. So he was, hold on, I could make this. Let's do my other presentation window. So I think I got it to where I can read both. There you go. Now you can see me and I can read. Okay, so 71-year-old Gerard Cintula, which means he grew up during the prime Operation Gladio era. They are trying desperately to pass him off as a pro-Putin stooge. Don't buy it. So I never heard my story from anything other than redacted when I first heard it, and I haven't seen any other narratives other than this. And then she goes on to say, Cintula is a self-described progressive writer and a founding member of the Rainbow Literacy Club. This Rainbow Literacy Club is exactly what you'd suspect it being. Apparently, there are variations of it all over the world, and UNESCO sponsored offshoots of it. Okay. UNESCO, that is another agency I always forget about. That is a BMG funded. So we have the WHO, the UN, can't remember the one that is called in the UK, WPATH. I mean, the list goes on and on and on and on, but that definitely is one. Does it make any sense that Slovakian Prime Minister Robert Fico, who wants to maintain friendly relations with President Putin, would be shot by a pro-Putin activist? No, it does not. Fico had come out against many of the EU, NATO was another NATO. We need to get rid of that. Policies, as has Orban in Hungary. And they are going after Orban hard ever since his interview with Tucker Carlson. So let's dig a little deeper. What do we have here? Sinchula, as a sympathizer and supporter of the pro-Russian paramilitary group Slovaki Bronchi, known for its links to the Kremlin, except these clowns are betting you don't understand how Operation Gladio works, which is true because we are a bunch of smart people now, right? So the organization called Slovaki, I got to push show more. I hate it when I have to do that. Okay, the organization called Slovenski Bronchi, SB, celebrated their 7th anniversary in January, but its history is actually quite rich. It started as unregistered, unofficial group. Since the beginning was closely related to another far-right organization, Slovenski Huti Brody. Okay, I don't speak Russian, guys, or Slovakian, so I don't know if I just slaughtered that. Far right as in fascist, as in Operation Gladio, right? You don't say Slovenski Bronchi were also seen in 2012 as the memorial service for Josef Tiso, the president of Slovak Klero fascist regime. I get so confused. So they call far-right fascists and they call far left communist. I think that's what I get so confused because the terms are so, the definitions, the far, the left, the right. This is why I say there's no left and there's no right. They've been infiltrated. Later, the leader of the organization, Peter Svishek, distanced Bronchi from this event and agreed that it was a mistake or inconvenient to the cause. Is this a mistake too? Another controversy had been aroused by the very logo this paramilitary organization. It is very similar to that of the I do not see youth organizations. The guy from Germany, leader World War II. Gosh, I hate YouTube sometimes. In reaction, Slovensky Bronchi told the media they were distancing themselves from the sick ideals of the German ideals from World War II. Besides Karnogursky, those worth mentioning include a leader of the Russian biker gang Night Wolves. We got to name wolves is always a red flag. Europe, Josef Hamlik, members of SB, have also undergone training involving an armored personnel carrier at Night Wolves' Slovakian headquarters. 10. Recruiters are trained in survival, combat, tactics, guerrilla warfare, use of weapons, first aid, topography, and even basic CBRN, which is chemical, biological, radiological, and nuclear defense operations. Slovensky Bronchi translates into Slavic conscripts. Wow. So that has Operation Gladio written all over it. Slovakia has seen many paramilitary groups over the last century, some unarmed, Czechoslovak sport patriotic clubs, e.g., Sokol and Orel, over 50 years ago in the Austro-Hungarian Empire. The fascist Hinkas Guards, and later the People's Militias, etc. In reading several articles, you come away with a definite impression of Slovakia Bronchi is the first serious, sorry, I'm old and my eyes are getting blurry. I'm reading that paragraph from the beginning. In reading several articles, you come away with the definite impression of Slovakia Bronchi is the first serious, large, and enduring paramilitary organization in Slovakia to emerge in the recent past. Historically, it is always described as far-right, meaning fascist. The original founders worked with the representatives of the Slovak Revival Movement, SHO, Slovenky Junta or Brody in Slovak, a far-right political organization with political ambitions. Both groups accepted the SHO's version of the history of World War II, i.e., under the president of the first Slavic state, Joseph Tiso, the government made deals with the Third Reich that protected Slovakia from communism, despite by the SHO. This is opposed to the Russian narrative that the communists under Stalin liberated Slovakia from I do not see you occupation. While SHO's anti-Russian attitudes regarding World War II, they had a good relationship with Russian organizations, including the Association STGAG, which united several Cossack-led paramilitary organizations that organized summer camps for the Cossack youth. They also honored Slovak anti-fascist fighters, such as the Slovak Partizani guerrilla resistance fighters against the I do not see yous, and Milan Rastislav Stefani, World War I hero and one of the founding fathers of the Czechoslovak state. Some current leaders believe their past pro I do not see you stance a little extreme. They are candidate support, acknowledge political support. Okay. Some current leaders believe the past a little extreme. They are candidate support and acknowledged. Political support is definitely considered by most as fascist, or as some like to call it, far right. Bottom line, don't believe the lies you're being told. The end. So I honestly had not, I heard the story last night, so I never got to hear the other narrative. Had I heard the other narrative, I still would not have believed that that's what it was. All right, so I'm going to go back and read your chats, guys, because I can't read your chat and read article. Let's see. Mr. Duggar. Okay. We got the Jeb Weaves. I got that dogs that I keep, Bob APAC. It's always in my chat, and it's amazing. I am such a confused person. It makes me so mad. Qui bono? Panda? Why are we... Okay, I don't know. Okay, I think I got through all of that. And nobody chatted. That was amazing. I went legally bind to 2 years during lockdowns due to no arm jousting. Cataract out last fall. You have 20/25 vision. I'm jealous. I would have new lenses put in my eyeballs in a heartbeat. And I do love audiobooks because I'm ADD. I retain things better if I am listening to something and doing something. Or you could call it a kinesthetic learner, which is often mistaken for ADD in children, if you guys want to know, because I did a bunch of research on it. That was the only benefit of having a preemie, is that you do have early childhood intervention. And I think it's because they want to experiment on you. And Anyway, but they see psychologists, they see eye doctors, they see all kinds of stuff for 2 years to make sure they don't have, like, complications from oxygen or yeah, there was no learning disability. However, one of the psychologists told me that your daughter is really, really smart, and people are going to tell you that she has ADD. However, she's smart, so she's gonna be bored, and she's a kinesthetic learner, which means she'll learn by doing. Don't ask me how he knew that, but so I always knew that. Your vision is that bad, Jillian? Wow. Anyway, does anyone have any questions? Um, before we get all the way off of this, before I say goodnight, guys, there's just a couple of things. So I don't know if you guys know who Bill Elmer is. He does a lot of X spaces on X. X spaces on X, okay? This is his link right there, and I'm going to post them. I already have his links. Look at me, I'm so organized tonight. I already have his link right here. Anyway, he's doing an emergency X streams. He's got one on Wednesdays, Fridays, and I don't know if he has one on Monday, but the whole point of it is the World Health Organization pandemic treaty is coming due May 27th. So there's a link for those right there. I'm going to post that. I don't know if I'm actually going to post these links under my chat later, but follow him and join his X Spaces. I cannot join the one tomorrow night. I live stream the one on Wednesday. I'm not going to I will live stream it, but it's not going to be live while they're talking. So I won't be able to jump in and ask questions if I have them. However, over the weekend, I am going to stream it for posterity this stuff is important and we never know who's going to get censored or taken down. So it's good to always have it backed up somewhere else. So that's what we're going to do. And it's going to make me listen to all of it. And I listened to it today. It was really good. Well, the one today was, they had a doctor on. Her name is, do I have her name saved? Oh, I have her in my banners. Hold on. One second. Okay. So her name is, we're going to show her. Her name is Dr. Kat Lindley. And she is not from the United States, but she's very intelligent with understanding what the treaty is trying to do. And if you guys don't know what the WHO pandemic treaty is going to do, guys, you need to figure it out. Think of what happened during 2020 and put that on steroids. I mean, the Second Amendment is going to come into play. Your First Amendment is going to come into play. Lots of body autonomy is going to come into play. Surveillance, digital IDs. It's the next phase. And they're supposed to finalize it on May 27th. It would have been passed by now, from my understanding. The UK did not like the fact that they would have to give away 20% of their vaccines to other countries. So it wasn't about national sovereignty, guys. It was about that. So they're talking about ways that you could do at the local level. They have a website, and let me pull that up really quick down here at the bottom. So let's see, where is it? Okay, right here. So then we have doortofreedom.org. On that website, you can go log in there, and all of the forms that you need to email your congressman or your local leaders, your district leaders, is all in there. There's all kinds of things for you to find. So I encourage you guys, if you believe in this cause. My state, I don't have as much stress. However, I am going to check and make sure that, because I do live in Utah, and I at least have Mike Lee in there. I need to look up the other ones and not be lazy just to make sure they're going to vote the way that They're supposed to. By sending them an email, there is a record of your communication. Also, if you call them on the phone, that would be funny to call the leaders and do a recording and do it live. That would be awesome. Maybe I should do that. So here's the link for that, guys. So there's doortofreedom.org. All the information that you need is there. Okay. And then I'm going to put up one more. And I'm sharing this with you guys because this is important. I'm going to do whatever. If I have to miss one of my Gladio shows to cover any of this stuff. Yeah, I didn't know, but yeah, I don't know. I like him a lot, Think Right. I've listened to a lot of his stuff. I like the way he treats people. I like the way he runs his spaces. The space he did on Wednesday, he let people go a little bit longer than normal. However, I think he was trying to fill time because some of his doctors got busy. And if you know how that goes, when you have a guest and they're running late, you kind of feel dead air. And then people start rambling, but he let them talk. A lot of people don't let people talk. Anyway, so then we have whitehouse.gov right here. So you got content uploads, 2024-04 global health security strategy. So that's all the documents you guys have at your disposal to read through to see what exactly is in there. So if you're a lawyer or know a lawyer who can break this down, that would be great. But the biggest part is at the local level, at the state level. This is a treaty. They're trying to pass it off as something else. A treaty has to have Senate approval. It's supposed to have our state's approval for this to move forward. Knowing these people like we know them in the last however long, you know that they are going to do something to try to sneak it through. They're going to do it. I'm posting the link right here. I'm on it. I got myself all organized today. And then I was in a panic thinking that Rumble wasn't going to start. And I was super tired. Why do you guys charge me like this? I'm like energized. And I think it's because these thoughts in my head before a show, I'm always like, okay, how am I going to start? How am I going to approach? And then I'm just like, you know the information, just do it. That's my biggest issue, as I know the information and I second guess myself, and I need to stop doing that. Anyway, guys, he does have an X space, and if you haven't done X spaces before, I actually kind of like them. Hi, Danielle Berserk. I like them because you could, if you have the guts to talk to someone, you can request a microphone and you can speak, or you can just listen and network with people. It's kind of hard to network on there, but if you show up, you get to know people, which makes it fun. So what I have done is I know a lot of my followers don't go into X spaces. Some do. And I just messaged him and said, do you do Rumble? And he said, no, he doesn't know how. So I said, I'll teach you, or I can simultaneously stream these World Health Organization stuff to Rumble to have a backup record of it. And then people can chat about it because I can request a mic when I live stream it. But this weekend, I'm going to watch the one from Friday night. He has a great panel of doctors on there. So follow Bill Elmer. Let me put his thing up there one more time. I did post his link. Okay. Just wanted to make sure. Yeah, I didn't know about a lot of people. I don't trust anybody right off the bat. Even people who do spaces, I will listen for a long time and see how they interact with people across different spaces, because you can host a space or you can join someone else's space. And I will see how they interact with people when they're not hosting a space. Are they really being mean, or are they just being funny? I don't know. So I'll watch for a long time to see how they act and behave. And that's me not being a very trusting person, because, this is social media and people, you have to have thick skin. And I have thick skin, but I don't want to be walking into a viper's nest. Okay, guys, remember, tomorrow night I have a viewing. It's from 6 o'clock to 8 o'clock. I have movies picked out. If I'm home before 10 o'clock, which I think I will be. What question did I get, Julian? I didn't see a question asked. Where do I see a question that I missed, Julian? Oh, how many chapters remain in the book? I thought I told you this already. You don't listen throughout the stream, but just because I'm just teasing. There's 2 hours left. I don't know how many chapters are left. I know there's 2 hours left. I can look that up real quick. I just closed the window. Hold on one sec. It'll take me 1 sec to pull it up. Hold on. So we're on chapter 22. So actually we have an hour and a half left. We have 23 and 24 left. Yeah, like I said, we're going to get into we're going to get into the war on terror, the next 2 chapters. And then I'm probably going to find a sequel to that. And I will go back to doing that 2 times a week. If not, I might do if I can start by 7 o'clock, 8 o'clock, 8 o'clock, I'm liking a lot. If I can start early, I can do more nights. And I want to keep that at a consistent date and time though. I want to start integrating more stuff. Like that article that we covered today from Towner and having different perspectives was good. And I want to keep doing stuff like that. And sorry, when I was posting all of those links, Julian, I can't read the chat. So I apologize. Okay, Thinkright's going. I think Mr. Duggar's gone. Guys, thank you for everyone who participated in chat. Those who showed up on X, Rumble, and on YouTube. This has been great. Okay, last thing, guys. I will post the next time that I'll be streaming in my locals channel and on Twitter. I always post in those 2 places. So look for it. And if I'm friendly with you, I'll send you a DM if you like coming here. If I DM you and you don't like me sending you reminders, please tell me because I won't do it. I do it for people who I think will be interested in it. So with that said, guys, have a wonderful weekend. If I don't see you until Sunday night, do something nice for someone. Remember, there are only 2 things in life that you can control, and it is your attitude and effort. Control those 2 things. You're going to go, and guys, head over to Traveling Fools. They are going to go live with Mr. Duggar. That's a fun time over there. So, guys, I had my whole ending all planned out, guys, because I always speak too much. Control your attitude and effort because everything else is beyond your control. Work hard and brush things off your shoulder that don't matter.